But Fightful MMA podcast will preview the two or three big events that are happening at the end of the year. We have Ryzen, we have UFC 232, and UFC 232. I really took a look at this card the other day, and man, it is a slapper. On the prelims, you have Curtis Millender and Seer Bahadurzada. You talked to Millender recently. What's his mindset like going into this card?
I think he realizes the opportunity here, being able to fight on the same card as John Jones and, kick things off. And he's had a great year. I mean, he's really been one of the guys that's been extremely notable in the UFC. So big way to finish the year here, getting a win over a really crafty veteran in CR. So I think he's just, to me, he just realizes that the UFC's on his side here. I mean, he's had all of his fights have been entertaining. So I think for him, it's a matter of just getting to that next level. Like if he gets a win here, we got to start talking about some more notable opponents for him at 170, because he's been a really nice surprise. And I say surprise because if you remember him in Bellator and you remember him having some rough luck, early in his career, he's really turned things around, and it's been a really nice story to see him go. And for the Fightful audience, you can always talk some wrestling with Curtis too. So check that interview out if you haven't. But he talks a lot about Becky Lynch and how he wasn't a fan initially, but now he's coming around. So lots of good talk there in that interview.
I like to hear that. He can visit FightfulWrestling.com if he wants. Yeah, Brian Kelleher, Montel Jackson rescheduled for this show, Andre Ewell and Nathaniel Wood. Then we got a name in Uriah Hall against Bevon Lewis, and I think Fight Pass is the right place for Uriah Hall. Lost 4 out of 5. You never know what kind of fight you're going to get out of him or what kind of fighter you're going to get out of him. Truly one of the most frustrating fighters of all time in that regard. And if he has a great fight, you can slide it in there if there's some time on the pay-per-view or the prelims. I think it's a good placement for a guy like Uriah Hall, James.
This is a perfect matchup in terms of what the UFC is doing here. You've got Bevon Lewis, who has a lot of hype. He won on Contender Series. They felt he wasn't ready. Got him back for another Contender Series fight. Won that. Now he's in the UFC, and he's from Jackson Wink. He's undefeated. He's a guy that a lot of people, there's some hype behind him. He's fighting the perfect opponent, in my opinion, because Uriah Hall has been so inconsistent, from, Dana White calling him the next Anderson Silva to him, having these fights that he hasn't just lived up to it. But then he's got wins over Gegard Mousasi, and he has wins over, some notable guys, and he has these, flashes of brilliance. But we'll see. I mean, this fight really is the definition of who is the real deal here. And I think with Bevon, he has the opportunity to, be a legitimate prospect in this division, and fighting a guy like Hall who's been so inconsistent, it's going to say a lot. Now with Hall, if he gets the win here, he takes out an up-and-coming prospect. Obviously, he's still relevant in the division. So good test for both guys. I really love this matchup. Could be fight of the night. Honestly, I think there's a possibility that both of these guys could be, really looking to go for broke here as they look to prove themselves.
The Fox Sports 1 prelims, the true farewell to the Fox deal, has a pretty damn good card with name value and talent. Douglas Silva de Andrade and Peter Yan is a really underrated fight from a quality perspective. You have Kat Zingano and Megan Anderson at women's featherweight, an honest-to-God featherweight fight, even though Kat Zingano is really a bantamweight. Megan Anderson, we've seen her struggle with the likes of Holly Holm and Cindy Dandois, and really, honestly, anybody who would be a top 10 fringe bantamweight. Can she get over that hump against Kat Zingano? Because, I mean, I love me some Megan Anderson, but, man, the proof is in the pudding.
This is a huge test for Megan. I mean, there has been a lot of hype against her. There was people who legitimately felt like she could beat Cyborg. And, of course, when she fought Holly Holm, we discovered that she can't stop a takedown. She has a weak ground game, like you referenced there. There's going to be a lot of questions answered in this fight because, realistically, I mean, Megan is a true featherweight. She's huge. I don't know if you saw her do the Invicta commentary or do the post-fight stuff. I mean, she towered over the rest of the women. And I know there's some women that, there's Alicia Zappaleta, for example. She's 4'11". I mean, obviously there's a clear case there, but in general, she towers over these fighters. She is a true definition of a featherweight. So if she can't beat, I mean, on paper, Kat is a better fighter. If you look at her accomplishments, you look at her ground game, you look at everything, she is a better fighter. But if Megan can't utilize her size here and get a win, I think it's really going to kill any momentum that she had. If she loses here, I mean, I don't know what the UFC does with her at this point, because realistically, this is a fight that she should have an advantage just with the size alone. And the fact that Kat, has had some rough luck. I mean, we have to remember that prior to her beating Marion Renault, she was on a bit of a losing streak. And so she really needs to prove herself as well. So it's a huge test for Megan Anderson. She's got to pass, and if she doesn't, I don't know what the UFC does. And I don't know what this means for the future of the featherweight division either, because if Anderson loses, I mean, what do you got? Her and Macy Chase on? Like, what are you going to do? It's crazy.
Yeah. Megan Anderson is always the first name I point to when people say, who are some under-the-radar names that could cross over into pro wrestling? I immediately say Megan Anderson. She has a great look. She's bigger than everybody, and she's into broadcasting and podcasting and all that stuff. She knows how to talk. She can sell something. I think that her upside is very good, but you got to prove it in the cage. And I think that Kat Zingano gets this done, but I think it's better for all involved except for Kat Zingano if Megan wins this fight. You have Ryan Hall and BJ Penn. Ryan Hall, who you never knew if he was ever really going to fight again in the UFC because I don't know if they even like him. A guy who has taken a 6-year break, a 1-year break, and now a 2-year break, and is still only 33 years old in Ryan Hall, just a supreme grappler taking on Penn. You know they want Penn to win. You know they want Penn to win.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. And, like I spoke with Hall and basically, he had matchups offered to him, but some of them fell through due to injury. Some of them he just wasn't interested in. In the UFC, when you start picking and choosing fights, you're going to get people against you. And, I think this is a good fight for BJ because, of course, we're going to see who has the better ground game. I mean, clearly BJ has, years of experience over Hall, but he's getting up there in age, and it's not like you have to worry about the threat of Hall knocking out BJ Penn. This is probably going to be on the ground. It's going to be a jiu-jitsu match, and I'm frankly intrigued because how much does BJ have left in terms of his fight career? I saw him in July when he was there for Jose Aldo for the Calgary card. I mean, it didn't seem like he had any intentions of coming back, but now here he is. He's fighting Hall. He's got way more experience. I'm intrigued by this matchup. Just from a fan standpoint, I think it's very interesting.
BJ Penn's last win, 2010. Wow.
Yep.
2010. How about this? The last time BJ Penn went the distance in a victory? When do you think?
I don't have it in front of me. Let me see. Was it oh gosh, because he finished guys at lightweight too.
Oh, yeah. So the last time he went to the scorecards and won was Renzo Gracie.
Oh yeah. I even forgot about that.
Hawaii. And if BJ Penn wins here, I think that helps the idea of UFC going to Hawaii. I mean, that's another name. I mean, they'll put him on there no matter what. If he wants on that card, he'll be on there. But, whew. Andre Arlovski, Walt Harris, it's a heavyweight fight. How am I supposed to decide what's going to happen between Walt Harris's natural athletic ability and his? I mean, sometimes he just spits out with 1 second left. But he's never had, I mean, God, it's weird to say that Arlovski is a top-level win. I don't know that he's ever beat anybody of Arlovski's level, though. And that being said, Arlovski is on his latest losing skid. As we've learned, that doesn't mean a damn thing to Andre Arlovski. He'll go on 4-fight losing streaks and 5-fight losing streaks. I mean, he lost 5 fights in a row, and the UFC kept him. He is 2-7 in his last 9, and the UFC has kept him when he couldn't buy his way back into the UFC for a while. What are you expecting out of this fight?
Another big question mark fight. What's interesting here is Harris used to train an American Top Team. Arlovski's at American Top Team right now. So I wonder if, there's some, maybe you can get some trade secrets or something like that. Harris has actually moved his camp. He's training with Eric Anders now, like full time. So he's at Spartan MMA and Fitness over there. I imagine not training with Eric right now with his last fight. I'm sure Eric had some surgery, so I don't think he's been getting to work with him. So we'll see if that pays off. Harris is one of those guys, a lot of promise, but just hasn't come through a lot of times. And this is a prime opportunity to take out a former UFC champion who's on a bit of a losing streak here. I think it's an opportunity here for Harris to shine. But again, Arlovski's had his moments. I mean, people forget that fight he had against Tuivasa. It was close. It wasn't like a clear-cut, like complete victory there. But but then again, I felt his last fight, it was one that he should have won. So it's really about who has the more upside at this point in their careers. I have no idea. I mean, this could go either way. If Arlovski wins, wouldn't surprise me, has the experience. But if Harris wins, younger guy, a little bit more athletic. We'll see. It's a very toss-up fight, in my opinion.
UFC 232 main card is awesome. Chad Mendes in what is a real test after missing 2.5 years. He came back and knocked out Miles Jury in quick fashion, but now he's facing the 18-1 Alexander Volkanovski, 5-0 in the UFC. I think the winner of this gets launched into the discussion for a title contender. Mendes has already been there and competed for a title. Volkanovski with a win over Mendes, I think, is a huge leap as far as name value for him. Oh, man, it's hard for me based on what I know of Chad Mendes' skill set to go against him. But, man, Volkanovski has been just a wrecking machine. And assuming everything goes smoothly, with him and his weight cut. I mean, I know that he used to compete at welterweight and lightweight and all that, and has made featherweight pretty consistently. I think I got to give the nod to Volkanovski. How do you see this one going?
It's interesting you say that because he's the underdog right now. He's plus 130 on the scorecards, or on the betting odds right now. I just checked. I'm with you. I think there's some more upside here with Volkanovski. He's an up and comer. He's got the momentum. He's on a huge winning streak. With Mendes, yeah, that was a great win over Miles Jury, and Jury's a tough guy, but Volkanovski's just looked incredible. I mean, what he did to Jeremy Kennedy, who I don't think I think Jeremy should, realistically still be in the UFC. Didn't really impress that much, but to dominate him the way he did, and then to follow that up with some of the other performances, I think this guy's legit, and we're going to find out a lot about him. I honestly believe if there's a finish in this fight, whether it's Mendes or Volkanovski, and it's early in the fight, I think they could leapfrog the winner of Aldo and Moicano as far as the next title challenger. Now, of course, we got to see what happens with Holloway, but I mean, if Aldo wins, that's really going to ruin everything. But if Moicano gets a decision and there's a finish in this fight, I think you could see Volkanovski, especially if he gets the win here, potentially leapfrogging and getting that title shot. So we'll see. A lot at stake here. But, I kind of favor Volkanovski in this one, just because I think there are, it seems like every fight he's getting better and better. And with Mendes, we've seen it, but Mendes has also taken a lot of damage. He's been off for a while. He's getting older. I think Volkanovski should, I think there's value in him as the underdog for sure.
For reference, my 3, I got 5 on it. BJ Penn plus 400, Douglas Silva, D'Andrade at plus 220, and Amanda Nunes at plus 230. I think I got 5 on it worthy. I would normally say Gustafsson, but man, I don't know if that's the case this time. We'll talk more about that fight in a moment, and we'll keep giving you the odds. Corey Anderson, a plus 135 against Ilir Latifi, a minus 155. This is a nice matchup. It might not be the greatest fight in the world in the cage, but a couple of guys that are going to be in your light heavyweight top 10 for the foreseeable future, whether it be for lack of competition or just their ability to win the right kind of matchups. Corey Anderson looked like he was going to be out of this top 15 after losing to Manawa and OSP and Shogun. But then he comes back and beats Patrick Cummins and Glover Teixeira. And then you've got Ilir Latifi, who has just had a sneaky awesome run at light heavyweight. He's lost to Ryan Bader and Jan Blachowicz and Gegard Musashi, and he lost to an Emmanuel Newton back in the day when Emmanuel Newton was something, but he's going to hang there. He's going to beat the Tyson Pedros and the OSPs and the John Volantes of the world. I think that Corey Anderson, despite losing to some of those people, might be a cut above, but I don't know that I've seen anything that says that he can beat Ilir Latifi. But what do you think about this?
Yeah, very close matchup. Anderson, obviously a great wrestler, and that's sort of what he's done to win a lot of his fights, although we have seen some finishes recently too. I just think Latifi, with his power and his knockout ability, I think he's, he's the favorite right now. I think he's like that for a reason. Interesting too, both these guys are managed by Ali Abdelaziz, so, I mean, he's going to get his 10% regardless of who wins the fight. But, I think that I think Latifi here is the guy you got to favor. Just to me, he's been more impressive if you look at his wins. Anderson, you mentioned some of those wins, but like Pat Cummins, probably not in the UFC anymore. There's a couple, wins in there that just aren't as impressive as what Latifi's done. Yeah, I like Latifi. I rarely ever pick against this guy, and I don't think I can here. I got to take Latifi.
Michael Chiesa moves up to welterweight and faces a former champion in Carlos Condit. Condit's 34 years old, does not tell the tale of his career. He's 30-12, so he's fought 42 times, and because he started in 2002, I have to say that we know of. And he's got several kickboxing fights in there as well. Carlos Condit has not won a fight since 2015. He has won 2 fights since losing the welterweight championship. He is 2 and I think 7 in his last 9 fights. You have a Michael Chiesa who at least finds a way to compete, although hasn't looked great since really the last 2.5 years. Michael Chiesa hasn't looked great. The question that I have is who has more left in the tank. For Chiesa, this would be a great win at welterweight. It would make him relevant, even though the win would look a lot better on paper than it really would be. How do you think this one goes?
What's crazy to me is that Condit's only 3 years older than Chiesa. You'd think Condit's a little bit older, but he's not. He's just, he's had so many wars. This is, again, another tough one, right? Condit just looks so disappointing. Since he's lost, it was basically since he lost the fight to Maia, he's got, 4 losses in a row. He's lost 5 of 6. It's really tough to say what like what Carlos Condit we're going to get in this fight. And with Chiesa, I mean, I tend to lean more on the side of like, I think there's some talent there. It's just a matter of, he just had such a big cut. I was at both of his fights. So the scheduled one in April where he was supposed to fight Pettis, I was at that one, and I was at the one at 226. That guy looks like death when he cuts weight. It's a huge cut. And, I spoke to him recently, and he basically said, this camp, it's so great not to focus on the cut. Like, he's already at, like, I think 187, and he's working his way down to 170. So that just goes to show you how big of a guy he is. And I've seen him in person. He's huge. So I'm tending to lead more towards Chiesa because I think there is some talent there. I just think bad luck's played into it. He didn't go down to Vegas for this camp because sometimes he does some training at Syndicate. He stayed at home, working with his guys there. It seems like he's in a better spot right now. He needs to win too. Like he's really, he doesn't have as big of a losing streak, but he still needs to get in there. I think we're going to see a good performance from Chiesa here. Could be totally wrong, but again, there's just so many question marks in this fight that like, I have no idea, but I got to go with the guy who I think has a little bit more upside, and that's Chiesa at this point. I think Condit, his best days are behind him. I
think the line of Chiesa at -190 and Condit at +165 is a fair one. I really think it is. I don't know if it'll come down to skill as much as who has more gas in the tank at this point. Christiana Cyborg Santos, a -250 favorite over Amanda Nunes, +230. This is, by the UFC standards, a super fight. Two champions duking it out. You spoke to Chris Cyborg ahead of this fight, James.
Yeah, I didn't get as much time as I wanted. Happy to still get the interview, though. But, I mean, she just seems like she's in a great place right now, getting to train with Valentina Shevchenko ahead of this fight, who fought Amanda Nunes. So I asked Chris, any insight there? And she said she's gotten lots. She's also training with Don Madge as well, who we saw get a pretty impressive debut himself. So really doing everything right, and she's got the new gym. I mean, it seems like she's in a great spot. And, I mean, why wouldn't you be? I mean, she's destroyed everyone she's fought. This is the first legit test for her, in my opinion, like in terms of like someone that I feel could give her a real challenge. We thought Holly Holm would be that fighter, but she completely outclassed Holly. Amanda's an interesting case because she really hasn't looked bad at all, other than earlier in her career, losing to Zingano and having a few other fights that maybe weren't as impressive. But I don't know, man. I think I got to give the edge to Cyborg just because she's been in the division longer. She's, looked impressive in all of those wins. But, Nunes does have a puncher's chance. But to me, the fact that Nunes wasn't able to put away some of her opponents, other than Rousey, other than Tate, tells me that I don't think she's going to be able to do that to Chris Cyborg. So I got to go Cyborg here. But this, to me, will probably be the toughest test for Chris Cyborg in her MMA career, because I don't think there's anyone else that even comes close at this point. And I see people saying that Chris is going to destroy Amanda. Amanda's got a chance in this fight. But yes, I just think overall, I think Cyborg's a better fighter.
They have such similar fighting styles. They have both developed this style where they keep people on the end of their punches up against the cage. And that's a style that Cyborg, I don't think, had until it became a realistic possibility that she'd face Ronda Rousey, because the way that Chris Cyborg used to fight, she would get in close, she would clinch, and that's a recipe for disaster against Ronda Rousey, despite any striking ability that she has. Since she has opened that up and she has put people at the end of her punches and not lost any power as a result, ooh, that's dangerous. I think that Amanda Nunes finds openings a little bit better than Chris Cyborg, where Cyborg relies on power. And I mean, a thing, even despite the power of Cyborg, she's TKOing women, not necessarily KOing women. And if you have the right type of attrition in the heart, you can maybe sustain it, maybe. Easier said than done. But I'm with you. I think her last 365 days, by the time this fight happens, is more indicative than the 13 years of her career before that. Holly Holm and Amanda Nunes, all due respect to Marloes Coenen, because I think that she's great. I think that that's more of a test than she had ever experienced. Before that, she was facing middle-of-the-road bantamweights. And, I mean, even beyond that, I mean, she was facing, like, Daria, who hasn't fought since. Like, how committed were some of these people? Gina Carano. Okay, well, I mean, she obviously was good enough to be in that spot, but never fought since. There were a lot of women that fought Cyborg, and for whatever reason, whether they weren't committed or she beat the desire out of them, just weren't there. And this is just this was the fight to make, James. This was the right fight to make. There wasn't anybody a clear cut at 135. No 145ers exist. So this is the fight to make. And I think it's going to come down to how well Amanda Nunes can take a punch from Chris Cyborg and how well Chris Cyborg can adapt to Amanda Nunes switching it up. Amanda Nunes does like to go to the body a lot. And we haven't seen somebody. We saw Holm be able to do that with some maybe rangy kicks, but also an underrated thing. Cyborg gets pushed around in the cage a lot more than people would expect. Like Holm did very, very well in that regard. Muscled Cyborg around a lot more than I expected. Still, I'm expecting Cyborg to take this victory, but wouldn't surprise me to see Amanda Nunes win this. She is one of my I got 5 on it.
Definitely value in Nunes here. She's never looked bad in a fight like recently, right? So that makes you think that she's made some improvements. And again, you talk about the style matchup. I mean, who has better striking? I mean, I give the slight edge to Chris, but they're both great strikers. They both have knockout power. Both, have looked impressive. So, I mean, the best case scenario for the UFC here is 2 things. Maybe not the best case scenario for the bantamweight division is either Nunes wins or you get a close fight that warrants a rematch. I think that would be great. I think there is a potential for this to be a close fight. And I can't wait. Like, this is the type of fight that really, I think, you want to see someone be challenged when you have a champion who's so dominant. I think that's why people are so disappointed about the Demetrius Johnson and TJ Dillashaw fight not happening, because you wanted to see a legitimate, like a real close challenge there. And, it never happened. And now we get to see that in the featherweight division. And it's just so much is riding on this fight. Like the future of the featherweight division is riding on this, because if Chris wins, let's say she goes in there and knocks out Nunes in the first round, what the hell do you do then? Like, it's like, they're going to have to keep pulling these fighters. Is Macy Chiasson going to fight because she won the Ultimate Fighter? No one knows. So I don't know. There's so much on the line here, but I can't wait, man. This is like, honestly, one of my favorite fights on the card. Main event still my favorite, but still can't wait for this one.
And you can't trust Durandamy in a bantamweight or a featherweight title fight. You don't know if she'll make it there. You don't know if she'll take the fight. You don't know if she'll fight after that. And who's next? Is it Caitlin Vieira? I mean, she could probably compete at either division, to be honest with you, but from a level perspective, I don't buy it. So I think the UFC should hope for a close fight, and they should probably hope that Amanda Nunes pulls it out, because that gives them a hell of a lot more flexibility. Rematch, killing the division, you got a lot of potential there. Also, the UFC would love somebody to pick off side. She's not a great pay-per-view draw. She's not like a needle mover by any stretch of the imagination. And the woman who beat Ronda Rousey also beating Chris Cyborg. Well, then you put Amanda Nunes' name in that greatest of all time talk, which she might already be in, but can't wait for that fight. We got the UFC Light Heavyweight Championship. I guess this is one of those situations where once they touch glove, or once the decision is read, Daniel Cormier gets stripped of the Light Heavyweight Championship. And I like that. That's what they're doing without necessarily saying it, because, hey, you never know with these two guys. John Jones, where's his head at? Alexander Gustafsson, will he even make it to the fight the week of? Because he's facing a longer layoff than John Jones is. And there are teas of new titles. We'll talk about that soon. But Light Heavyweight Championship, John Jones thrown right back in there. Is that the right move?
Yes, I think for sure it's this was the fight to make. I was at the first UFC event I ever covered was actually 165 with Jones and Gustafsson. I was cage side. It was like, one of the best experiences of my life getting to see that fight. And now to do this fight, to have it for a title, I think this makes sense. I mean, I think this might be the only time in MMA history, and hear me out for a second here, that we have so many question marks going into such a pivotal fight, because there's so many like question marks, just like even just starting with Jones. Okay. Obviously the steroid stuff, obviously, the layoff. I mean, he has fought once a year, but still, I mean, there's been a lot of gaps compared to when he was a lot more active early in his career. So fighting once a year since then, how is that impacting him? He's older, the pressure of winning, the pressure of being the former champion. There's so many things on Jones's end. And then on Gustafsson, it's like, he's slowed down a bit. He's had some fights that he hasn't won. Like I was looking at his record. I think he's 3-2 since the first Jones fight. That's not great. And then
Chop spoke openly about John Jones not training for that first fight. It was not a secret. I was nowhere near plugged into the inside of the MMA world back. I'm still on now. And even I heard that John Jones wasn't training for that fight.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. Like what are we going to be able to see? And then we have to remember too, that the Cormier fight, I mean, a lot of people, they have short memories. Cormier was winning that fight before Jones caught him. I mean, he didn't look great. He didn't look great in the OSP fight. How's he going to look here? I mean, I see a lot of people on social media like, oh, he's going to destroy Gustafsson. No one really knows. I mean, we really don't. Like, was he doing steroids? We don't know. What was he not? Is he really that good? I mean, no one really knows here. And then add in the fact that Gustafsson's had an even longer layoff than Jones has, and he's getting up there and he's taken some damage. I mean, forget about the first Jones fight. Anthony Rumble Johnson knocked him out. I mean, Cormier's landed some good shots in him. there's so many like question marks into this fight. But if we're just looking at this on paper, how can you go against John Jones? I mean, that to me, there's no way I'd bet this fight. I'll tell you that, because there's too many question marks. But that's what makes this so special. And what a way to end this year, where it's been a crazy year for MMA, to have this fight as the last fight of the year for the UFC. To me, it doesn't get any better than this. Like, I had, just to give you a little insight, and I don't want to go off on a rant here, but like, I was supposed to do a family thing that night. And my wife's like, yeah, I put this in the calendar. And I said, well, no, you didn't run this by me. Like, John Jones is returning. Like, I'm not missing this. There's no way in hell I'm missing this. So I got some angry in-laws at me, but John Jones is coming back. I'm not missing it. There's no way in hell I would not watch this on PVR or, later the next day. I have to watch this live. I'm going to be watching with some friends. I can't wait for this fight.